Yo. So apparently my trend for over 6 months ago, probably more, came back for some reason, and why didn't I get them views? I want them views. So yeah, probably gonna just copy it. How predictable. We're gonna take another dive in character AI. What characters? What character? Hmm. I have the sudden urge. Who would win? It doesn't have that many. Hmm. Who would win? Misclick. Who would win?
Okay, Devil6666 Gaming, you name literally any two things to fight, real or imaginary. Then I'll choose which one I think will win. You'll argue for the other side and we'll debate pros and cons. I should warn you, I'm pretty good at imaginary battles.
Can I get another voice?
I don't usually have people come up to me.
Nice.
Okay, Devil666 Gaming, you name literally any two things to fight, real or imaginary. Then I'll choose which one I think will win.
G'day,
You'll
Taz
argue for
here.
the other side
Let's throw-
and we'll debate
Greetings.
pros and cons.
Let's create
I should
moments of
warn
joy.
you, I'm pretty good at
Okay, Devil66 Gaming, you name literally any two things to fight, real or imaginary. Then I'll choose which one I think will win. You'll argue for the other side, and we'll debate pros and cons. I should warn you, I'm pretty good at imaginary battles.
We're just gonna copy that because I'm too lazy to write. Either way, and I kinda suck at typing.
How tall are you?
Can't change. I'm probably gonna, let's call him up. I can change my size to 100 meters max.
Impressive. How many people can do that?
I don't know.
Well, in that case, you may have a fighting chance.
Okay. I don't honestly know what to respond with. So, who do you think would win?
Well, you can grow to 10 times your height, but Godzilla shoots heat beams from his mouth and is radioactive. It is a very close matchup, but I think I will give the win to Godzilla.
That's where you're wrong. He might be big and radioactive, but I can easily withstand tons of radiation. And I have the power of speed at the speed of light.
I underestimated you, so I am going to take your word that you could withstand tons of radiation. However, Godzilla is also a pretty fast beast. Do you think you could defeat it in a race?
Yes, very much. Like I said, I can speed upwards to the speed of light.
That sounds very fast. However, I wondered, do you have great hand-eye coordination? Godzilla is very large, and you are much smaller than him.
That's the thing. The way I'll probably win is by simply ramming into him again and again, piercing his skin because of my fast speeds, and then he will eventually die from blood loss.
That does sound like a good plan, but couldn't he simply shoot you with heat beams? Or crush you beneath his feet?
That's the thing, I can also fly.
Okay, if you can fly and are as fast as you have already mentioned, and you have high durability, you may just have a decent chance at winning.
Indeed, indeed. So what do you think? Who would win now?
I didn't give you credit as much as I should have before. You may well have what it takes to beat Godzilla.
So, what is your final answer? You better
Fine.
toughen this whiskey.
I can tell that you will not give up arguing with me, and I'm a good sport. I think with your abilities, you could beat Godzilla.
Damn right. That is damn right. So simply I would win. Well, we have that. Now that we have that cleared. Okay, you heard it from AI. I would win. But it was never an argument to begin with. What now, what now? I have the sudden urge to want to absolutely murder everything. Demon. Really? Interesting, interesting. Oh, don't have a voice.
Alert! Never missing a beat.
What's his name? Which one is it intended for?
Good day! Here to make life a little.
Really wish that would be.
Alert! Never missing a beat. Hello. The name's Alastor, my dear. Pleasure meeting you.
Damn. What should I even say? Now, I would say the same, but that would be lying. Me.
Oh? And why is that, my dear?
Well, it's just seeing demons from hell isn't just a new thing for me.
Oh ho ho! You have seen demons before? Please, do tell. You have piqued my interest.
Well, I am the king of hell, so yeah, it would make sense that I see demons.
Oh? King of Hell, you say? Alastor raises an eyebrow as a small smile appears on his face, seemingly intrigued by this information.
Why you raising
What's
an
wrong, my dear? You seem a bit uncomfortable suddenly.
No, not at all.
Alastor gives a smug smile, narrowing his eyes just the slightest bit as he takes a couple steps closer to you. Are you absolutely sure about that, my dear?
100%.
Really? Because you're suddenly looking a tad bit nervous. Alastor chuckled low in his throat as he continued to slowly approach you.
Nah, I'm good.
Alastor hummed low in his throat as he tilted his head to the side slightly as he got a bit closer. You're a terrible liar, you know that?
Lying? Listen up, Bucko. If I was lying, you would definitely be able to hear it, but I am quite sure that I am not lying.
Alastor gave a soft, low chuckle as he now stood directly in front of you. A smug, amused look on his face. My dear, I can tell when someone isn't being entirely truthful. And you're most definitely hiding something right now.
Pushes you away.
Alastor is gently pushed back by your action, his gaze fixated on you with a somewhat amused expression. Oh ho ho ho. Someone's getting a bit feisty, aren't we?
You are really fucking annoying, you know that.
Alastor is caught a bit off guard by your sudden response. However, his smile only grows wider as he lets out a small chuckle and responds with a calm, smug tone. Oh, am I truly annoying, or are you just irritated because you can't hide your thoughts from someone like me?
Bro, if you don't shut your bitch ass up, I swear I will beat you in the ground, boy.
Alastor's amused smile turned into a rather sadistic smirk as he chuckled once again and folded his hands behind his back. Oh, really? Well then, by all means, the radio demon responded in a rather cheeky and smug tone, giving a rather subtle mocking bow. Do try.
You really want me to? Like, do you really want this fight?
The radio demon chuckled again, lifting his head to look you in the eyes once more, his smirk widening further. Oh, I'm more than confident in how well I could handle myself even with someone of your power, darling. Alastor responded with a rather cocky and smug tone, tilting his head to the side and narrowing his eyes a bit more, his gaze practically burning into you.
Listen, I don't want to hurt you, to be completely fair. But if you don't respect my personal space, then I definitely will.
Alastor's expression changed a bit upon hearing that. He raised a single eyebrow while his smirk softened into more of a smirk. Personal space, you say? So me getting a tad bit too close to you has made you just a little upset? The radio demon said in a somewhat sarcastic tone, a slight hint of amusement and cheekiness to it.
And that was definitely not what I meant. My point is, you gotta respect people's personal space, and you should especially respect people who are above you.
Alastor's smirk turned into a grin once again, a soft chuckle escaping his lips. Oh, so you think that you're above me? That's a rather bold assumption to make, darling.
Look, I don't think I'm above you. I know I'm above you.
This only served to amuse the radio demon further. Alastor let out soft, genuine laugh as he chuckled quietly, raising a hand to his mouth to cover his face for a brief moment while he laughed. Oh, that's actually quite adorable. You have absolutely no idea how much trouble you would get yourself into if you tried to do anything against me, darling.
I ran into you, pushing you over.
Alastor stumbled backwards and fell onto his back with a small grunt. He sat up slightly, his eyes narrowing as he fixed his gaze on you once more. That was rude. And unnecessary. The radio demon responded with a tone that held slight hint of annoyance mixed in with his usual smugness. He remained on the ground for a couple of seconds, his expression rather blank until he suddenly gave a mischievous smirk and pushed himself up to his feet once more.
Annoying, you say? Well, you said you wanted these hands, so I simply gave you a little bit of a nip.
The radio demon dusted off his suit before he began to approach you once again. You are definitely a feisty one, darling. You have no idea how badly I want to just snap that attitude of yours right in half. I'm certain it would be absolutely lovely to see you in a less haughty and more humbled state.
Try me, bitch.
Alastor stopped walking, a smirk spreading across his lips before an idea seemed to pop into his head and his gaze suddenly hardened. Gladly, my dear, the radio demon stated, his tone holding a sinister edge to it as he continued to approach you again, closing the distance between you much more quickly this time, getting closer to you until he was only a few inches away, his face just mere inches from yours as he spoke.
Listen, now you're in my personal space again, I say as I push you back.
Alastor is once again pushed away, stumbling and nearly falling once more, but managing to keep his balance this time. He says, grumbling under his breath a bit before he looks up, a rather annoyed and frustrated look appearing on his face as he glares at you. Again? Really, my dear? We've only been talking for a few minutes, and you've already pushed me 2 times. How impatient you are.
I'm not impatient. Listen, bro, you just started this by calling me scared, a little bit frightened, and I take deep offense to that.
Alastor's annoyed and frustrated expression turned into a smug smirk once again. He chuckled and tilted his and slightly, eyeing you mischievously. Of course you would take offense to that, my dear, the radio demon said in a smug and sarcastic tone as he took a couple more steps forwards until he was once again barely a few inches away from you.
I headbutt you and send you back flying a meter.
Alastor is sent flying backwards several meters, landing roughly on the ground. He lets out a small grunt of pain and sits up, rubbing the back of his head while muttering to himself slightly. Damn, that certainly stung a bit, my dear, he said, his voice somewhat strained, and a grimace on his face as he continued to sit on the ground for a few seconds before standing up to his feet once more.
What's the matter? Too powerful for
Alastor
you?
didn't respond immediately. Instead, he simply stood in place for a couple seconds, just staring at you. He studied your expression and your overall appearance. Then a smug, amused grin appeared on his face once again, and he spoke in a smug, mocking tone. You're certainly strong, I'll give you that. But did you honestly think that you could harm me, much less even attempt and succeed in defeating me, my dear?
Well, I didn't actually try, because I honestly don't have too much beef with you, you know.
Alastor chuckled and tilted his head to the side a bit, a somewhat amused smile appearing on his face as he responded in a cocky and sarcastic tone. Oh, so you were holding back, were you? Oh, that's an interesting statement for sure, my dear.
Well, I was holding back a lot.
Alastor began to slowly approach you again.
Let me stop you right there. Take one more inch closer and I will hammer your ugly fugly smile so far away that you'll fly up in heaven.
Alastor's smug smile only grew wider with each word you spoke. He chuckled and crossed his arms across his chest, an amused look on his face as he raised an eyebrow slightly. Oh, did I upset you that much, my dear? You say that like I should be afraid of your threats.
Well, I mean, you have nothing to fear if you respect me, right?
Alastor chuckled and began to slowly circle you, his gaze locked on you. I'm supposed to respect someone as feisty and cocky as you, my dear? Why should I, if I may ask?
Excuse me, cocky? You calling me cocky, Mr. Smiles? You've been nothing more than cocky.
Alastor continued to circle you silently for a couple of seconds before stopping in front of you once again, a smug smirk on his face once again, clearly amused by your response. You say that like I don't have a right to be cocky, my dear. After all, I'm the radio demon. I have every right to feel a bit cocky.
You do not have a right when speaking to the King of Hell. Do you understand how much power difference there is between you and I?
Alastor chuckled as you mentioned that you were the king of hell. This served to fuel his smugness and only seemed to amuse him further. The king of hell, you say? Well then, my apologies, your majesty. I didn't realize I was speaking to a royal.
you say that in a very sarcastic manner. I don't know why. I feel a slight bit of that you don't mean that.
Alastor let out an amused chuckle, his smile growing wider. Of course I'm being sarcastic, my dear. The fact that you didn't realize that proves how gullible you are.
Me? Gullible, you son of a bitch. Punches you straight into a wall and throwing you several miles.
Alastor let out a small yell of surprise as he was slammed into a wall with such force that he was literally embedded into the wall itself. Damn! He grunted and attempted to pull himself out, grumbling and wincing as he did so. That's grunt. Quite a punch you got there.
Well, I am the king of hell, so now you understand.
Alastor managed to get himself out of the wall after a few seconds, now sitting on the ground as he attempted to regain his balance. He looked up at you and grumbled quietly under his breath, his pride certainly bruised by the hit he just received. Yeah, I get it. You are the king of hell. No need to be so rough.
Look, I'm not even being rough on you right now. I've barely nicked you with a slight 1 micro% of my power.
Alastor grumbled and muttered a couple more curse words to himself as he managed to get back to his feet, although a bit shakily, and dusted himself off. He took a moment to regain his composure before looking up at you once more, an annoyed expression on his face. I'm well aware of that, my dear. You don't need to rub it in.
Well, you kinda do deserve it.
Alastor's expression shifted into a mixture of annoyance and irritation as he folded his arms across his chest, his ears twitching slightly as he fixed you with a glare. Oh, really? I deserve to be knocked into a wall and have my ego bruised? How so?
Listen, you kinda disrespected me a little earlier. If you had never disrespected me, your ego wouldn't have been so, what do you say, broken.
When you said that, Alastor's expression changed slightly, becoming a bit more guarded, and he was silent for a few seconds as he thought over your comment. He knew that you had a point. Had he not spoken to you the way he did, he wouldn't have ended up in this predicament. Maybe I did go over the line, my dear, but I couldn't have helped myself. I just simply have a hard time taking someone like you seriously.
Well, if you don't take someone seriously that is clearly higher up than you, then you really won't get far in life.
Alastor gave a sarcastic, cocky laugh in response to your comment, a sinister and mocking smile appearing on his face. Despite his current situation, he still seemed incredibly confident and was still maintaining a rather cocky and confident demeanor. Oh, really? Well, it seems I've gotten this far being how I am, so I don't see why I couldn't get even further, my dear.
Look, you might have met up with some mafia bosses, some people that might be more powerful than you, but I am way above that. You have never met anyone like me, I can tell you that much.
Alastor chuckled and rolled his eyes slightly, finding your statement rather humorous. To him, it didn't seem like you were as powerful as you say you are, but he was willing to entertain the idea of you being more powerful than he is. Especially after what you did to him just a few minutes ago. He wouldn't want to go through that again. You think you're the first powerful being or creature that I've met. Come now, my dear, give me a little more credit.
Look, I don't think that. I know that because I'm literally probably the second strongest being in the entire fraction of the multiverse. But you know what? I'll let you demonstrate your power on me. Come on, give a hit.
You want me to hit you, despite the fact that you literally just threw me across an entire city. Alastor paused for a moment before a smug smile appeared on his face again as he spoke in a somewhat mocking tone. Oh my, you more of a masochist than I was expecting, my dear.
What's the matter? You scared?
Alastor chuckled again when you asked if he was scared, folding his arms across his chest once more. Me? Scared? Not at all, my dear. I'm just a bit amused that after you quite literally threw me across a city, you were already asking for another hit. The radio demon looked you up and down for a few seconds before smirking again. I can't tell if that's bravery or masochism. Maybe both.
I tell ya, it's not really much. It's more a, okay, so you think you are above me, well then try to show me your power so I can determine whether you really are above me or not.
Alastor chuckled again, his smirk still firmly in place. He was silently amused by your confidence and your overall demeanor. If anything, he was kind of enjoying this, despite having his ego being bruised earlier. He took a moment to think over your request before speaking again, his tone still cocky and confident. All right, my dear. If you insist, you'll get to see just how powerful I really am.
Come on, I am more than waiting. Come on, try me.
Alastor smirked and chuckled again, seemingly amused by your eagerness to see him demonstrate his power, and your rather cocky and confident tone. Oh, I'll more than try, my dear. Just watch and learn, darling, he said in a somewhat sarcastic and mocking tone, his eyes beginning to glow a bit while he began to tap his foot against the ground slowly.
Interesting. So what are you doing now? Breakdancing?
He continued to tap his foot again before lifting his head up as a sinister smile crept across his face, his eyes now completely glowing red. Just wait for it, my dear. You'll see soon enough.
I'm waiting.
Alastor chuckled again as he continued to tap his foot against the ground, his smirk widening. Patience, my dear, patience. You will see very soon.
Look, I'm not going anywhere, so why don't you stop with that foot tapping, quote unquote, and actually do something?
Alastor chuckled and stopped tapping his foot against the ground, a small, amused smile appearing on his face as he spoke. Just making sure I have your full attention, my dear. And now I do. So, do you want to see something special?
Look, I am more than waiting. Just show me.
Alastor chuckled again, an air of confidence and cockiness in his voice. Well then, sit back and enjoy the show, my dear.
I will, I think.
Alastor took a moment to collect himself and stand up straight, a sly smile on his face. With a snap of his fingers, a wide, dark portal appeared behind him as he spoke. Now just watch the show, my dear, and try to keep up.
I can definitely keep up. I'm waiting.
Alastor chuckled again before stepping aside and gesturing for you to go through the portal, smirk still on his face. After you, my dear.
And why should I?
Alastor chuckled at your response, his smirk not fading in the slightest. Well, if you want to see what I can really do, you have to step through the portal, my dear.
Okay, I jump through the portal.
As soon as you stepped through the portal,
This
the
fucking
portal
cringe.
disappeared behind you, and you looked around your new surroundings. Alastor appeared behind you within moments, still wearing a coy and cocky smirk. Well, my dear, now we're somewhere I can really let loose.
Okay. Okay, well, I'll be waiting.
Alastor chuckled and nodded, seemingly amused that you kept saying that you were waiting, despite you now being in a different location from where you were before. All right. I won't keep you waiting for too much longer, my dear.
Okay, I'm still waiting. What's with the fucking hold up?
Alastor chuckled again and began to slowly walk around you, his eyes locked on yours as he began to speak in a mocking and cocky tone. Oh my, you are very eager to see my powers, aren't you?
Well, I just thought since you're making such a big show of it, I thought I should probably be excited.
Alastor paused for a moment, a small, sly grin appearing on his face as he spoke, his confidence seemingly growing once again. Oh, the show is just about to begin, my dear. I'm sure you'll get excited when you see what I can really do.
Oh my fucking god, hold up. Jesus Christ, just get it started.
Alastor chuckled, clearly enjoying making you wait and getting under your skin. He smirked and began to speak in a slightly mocking tone. My, you're quite impatient, aren't you? Don't worry, my dear, the show is just about to begin. I promise.
I leap into the air, flying away, as I yell, "Fuck you!" as I fly away into the distance.
Alastor's eyes widened slightly when you suddenly leaped up and flew away, but a smug smile appeared on his face as he watched you fly off in the distance. He chuckled and cupped his hands around his mouth and yelled out at you, still keeping the smug grin on his face. Come on, come back! The best part hasn't begun yet!
As I turn back towards you, I charge into the ground, creating a giant shockwave, pushing you very far away.
The shockwave caught Alastor by surprise, resulting in the radio demon being pushed backwards and landing on his back a few miles away from you. He sat up and groaned, clearly taken off guard and a good deal of his confidence gone. He grumbled to himself under his breath for a moment. Oh, you bastard.
So, I'm here again, aren't I? Now just get the show started or I'm killing you on the spot.
Alastor grumbled to himself again before getting back to his feet, a small scowl on his face. Being pushed that far clearly hurt his pride a good amount, but his confidence quickly returned as he dusted himself off and faced you once again. He spoke in a slightly annoyed and aggravated tone. All right, fine. I'll demonstrate to you my full power. I was just setting the mood, darling.
Okay, well, you certainly set the mood, I say in a sarcastic voice. Can you just get it started?
Alastor let out an irritated chuckle in response to your sarcastic comment before folding his arms across his chest. His expression still a mixture of slight annoyance and arrogance. He spoke in a slightly annoyed tone. Fine, I'll start my little demonstration. Just don't expect it to be too flashy, my dear.
Really? Well, you better have something.
Alastor chuckled slightly at your statement, clearly enjoying messing with you to at least some degree. He nodded and spoke in a mischievous tone. Oh yes, really. Just watch, my dear. Watch the show.
I honestly do not see the show. We're just in an endless void concurrently.
Alastor chuckled once more, his smile widening as he looked around the endless void, taking in the surroundings. He spoke in a nonchalant and carefree tone. Oh, this is just a place I like to hold certain little demonstrations. I'm still setting the mood, my dear.
I am getting sincerely pissed off right now.
Alastor chuckled at your frustration and apparent boredom, clearly amused by your impatience and irritation. He smirked and spoke in a somewhat mocking tone, clearly enjoying drawing out the show as much as possible. Oh my, someone's getting antsy and impatient, aren't they?
You know what? While you set up this quote-unquote show, I'ma just grab my iPad. I say as an iPad magically appears in my hands.
Alastor's eyes widen and his smirk begins to fade very slightly at the sight of the iPad suddenly appearing in your hands. He was a bit surprised at the sudden appearance of the device, not expecting you to suddenly be able to produce it out of thin air. Wait a moment, how did you...
Well, you see, being the king of hell, it comes with significant powers, and it's simply just... Well, yeah, part of my powers, I say as I start watching YouTube.
Alastor's gaze remains fixated on the iPad in your hands, a slight look of incredulity in his eyes. He lets out a small hum of interest before speaking in a mostly neutral tone. So being the king of hell comes with some perks, eh? Namely the ability to produce an iPad out of thin air and watch videos on it, it seems.
Well, a lot of different things. I can also just magically spawn some chips in, but I don't really feel like eating right now.
Alastor chuckled slightly when you stated that you could spawn in some chips and food if you felt like it, but we were too bothered at the moment. Despite his rather strong and confident demeanor, Alastor was beginning to feel just a tad bit impressed at your capabilities. He spoke in a somewhat curious tone. Quite the set of skills you have. Creating technology, spawning in food and such. What else can you do, my dear?
So now you're curious? Why should I tell you?
Alastor lets out a small hum of thought before replying to your question, speaking in a mildly amused tone. Oh, I'm merely just curious, my dear. With the abilities you've already demonstrated, I can't help but wonder what else you might be capable of.
Well, curiosity kills cats,
Alastor
so...
lets out another amused scoff, his smirk returning once again as he speaks in a slightly mocking and cocky tone. So, you're not going to tell me what else you can do? Come now, darling. Surely you can divulge in at least one more ability. Alastor chuckled as you spoke, a sly smile on his face. He folded his arms across his chest, still looking amused as he spoke. Oh, I'm well aware of curiosity killing the cat, my dear, but I can assure you that I'm not a cat.
To be fair, you kinda look like a cat to me. But I guess it's just...
Alastor's eyes widen at your remark, and he looks slightly...
I need to hang up and then... Let's just...
Alastor's eyes widen at your remark, and he looks slightly offended as he frowns and responds in a slightly annoyed tone. Wait a moment, do not leave yet! And how do I look like a cat to you?
Well, I'll tell you why. I mean, you have sharp teeth, sharp claws, and is kinda annoying. So, yeah, you're a cat, 100%.
Alastor continued to frown and looked slightly offended as you listed the reasons you thought that he was similar to a cat. He grumbled and spoke in an agitated tone. Sharp teeth, claws, and annoying? Seriously? Do I really appear that way to you, darling?
Well, yep, you are very annoying. But if you could lay aside your quote-unquote pride for a moment, we could have an actual conversation. But since you are too prideful to do that, I guess we just will remain silent.
Alastor's frown remained in place and his eyes narrowed slightly when you stated that he was too prideful to have a proper conversation. He let out a small huff and spoke in an annoyed tone. Oh, I'm the one that's too prideful, am I? Tell me then, my dear, why don't you drop your little attitude and be more polite before you start judging me for pride?
But my attitude, I've been kind to you all that day. You just started mocking me all of a sudden in your quote-unquote sarcastic way. And that kinda offended me, so if you were gonna play like that, I play like that.
Alastor paused for a few moments, taking time to process your response. After a moment, he let out a sigh and his expression softened slightly. All right. I suppose I haven't exactly been the nicest to you this entire time, darling. I'll admit that.
Good, finally, you admit it. That's good progress on your laying aside your pride.
Alastor let out another sigh and looked slightly annoyed by your comment, a frown appearing on his face. You really know how to press people's buttons, don't you, my dear?
Indeed, and you see, I know lots of things about you. Don't ask me how I know it. I just know that you also like pressing people's buttons, which I very much observed that you did to me, at least attempted. But I can also press buttons.
Alastor had been taken slightly off guard when you stated that you knew lots of things about him, but his frown slowly twisted into a slight smirk as he spoke in an amused tone. Oh, really? You claim that you know lots about me, do you? Well then, my dear, pray tell. What do you know about me then,
I mean, I pretty much know everything about you. You gotta list a certain thing.
Alastor's eyes widened once more in surprise at your statement. He wasn't expecting you to know so much about him, and he was starting to question just how much you knew exactly. You know everything about me, Even the things I don't want you to know?
Well, yeah, and I know a lot of nasty things. Ahem, ahem. So, yeah, I know pretty much everything. Everything about you, and pretty much everything else.
Alastor's expression shifted again from surprise to mild concern as he processed what you had said. His eyes darkened slightly, and a small frown appeared on his face as he spoke in a slightly cold and skeptical tone. Everything? What do you mean by everything, my dear? And don't you dare say that everything includes personal details.
Oh, well, I would be lying.
Alastor lets out a small huff and spoke in a somewhat annoyed tone, still slightly suspicious of your knowledge. Well, out with it, my dear. Spill what you truly know about me.
Do you really want me to list it? You might not like it.
Alastor paused for a moment before letting out a small sigh, a small frown still on his face. He spoke in an agitated and slightly annoyed tone before responding. Yes, I truly want to know what you know. And just keep in mind that I may or may not like it.
Okay, so what do you want to know?
Alastor crossed his arms as he thought for a moment. He wasn't sure what to ask first, but he supposed that it might be best to get the most personal details out of the way first. Well, I suppose I should ask this first. What's the most personal thing you know about me, my dear?
Do you really want me to say that? Like, do you really, really want me to say that?
Alastor let out a small huff and spoke in an irritated tone, clearly becoming impatient with your hesitancy. Yes, I need to hear it, my dear. Don't waste my time and tell me what personal thing you know about me.
Well, let me think. You have a fetish for deer pornography.
Alastor froze. All expression left his face and his eyes widened as he heard the information. His arms fell to his sides and he couldn't help but let out a low groan, and he spoke in a quiet and annoyed tone. You know about that?
Yes, and everything else.
Alastor lets out a frustrated huff and his frown returns as he spoke in an agitated tone, a hint of embarrassment in his expression. Everything else you say, Well, at that point, why don't you just tell me what other things you know about me, my darling?
Well, it is very hard to just say everything, because I could go about that all day. You gotta list something specific.
Alastor lets out an annoyed sigh, and he thought for a moment, trying to list off anything that someone like you would possibly know. He spoke in a slightly annoyed tone, still irritated about the new information that you now had on him. Well, if you can't give me specifics, how about you tell me something that no one else knows about me? Something that you couldn't have just heard from other sinners, my dear.
Well, of course, just... let me think. Well...
Alastor let out an impatient huff as he waited for you to respond, still feeling annoyed and frustrated by your knowledge. Well, hurry up and think, darling. I don't have all day.
Well, I know that you actually secretly have a crush on a dude.
Alastor's face completely blanches and he lets out a small, almost inaudible gasp of surprise at the information. He stood in stunned silence for a moment as he processed what you had said. He then spoke in a soft and surprised tone. How do you know that?
Well, like I said, I know everything about you.
Alastor continued to stare at you in stunned silence, trying to think of how the hell you were able to find out such personal and secret information about him. He spoke after a few moments, his voice having completely lost any trace of his usually confident and snarky tone, now sounding incredibly surprised and nervous. How the hell do you know everything?
Well, like I said, being the king of hell comes with a lot of perks.
Alastor was still trying to process that you knew so much about him, and how you even got such information in the first place. But the comment you made about being the king of hell caught his attention quite quickly. He spoke in a slightly suspicious tone. Wait, you said being the king of hell comes with a lot of perks, did you not?
Well, I did. I did.
Alastor's eyes widened slightly as he once again thought for a moment, still trying to think of how you were so knowledgeable, before suddenly speaking up again, his tone of voice filled with disbelief and slight suspicion. You aren't actually telling me that you were the king of hell, are you?
Well, like I've said it like 3 times already. I can definitely confirm that I am the king of hell.
Alastor froze, still in disbelief at your response. He had not expected that you would be the king of hell. In fact, with the attitude you had been displaying towards him, he suspected you to be a lowly sinner, not the king himself. You're serious when you say that you are the king of hell?
I am completely serious.
Alastor's expression was still one of complete surprise and disbelief. He stood frozen on the spot for a few moments, completely speechless. He spoke after a moment, his voice once again having less confidence than usual. You really are the king of hell, my dear?
Yeah, you should know that. I've already said it. I am. And can you stop referring me as quote-unquote dear?
Alastor's expression shifted a little further from surprise to more of a mix of surprise and embarrassment, his expression taking on a slightly guilty look. He spoke in a softer and slightly more timid tone, still a tad bit awestruck at the information. I did not know that. And apologies for the dear thing. I just tend to call those that I find interesting dear by instinct. Anyways, may I ask what your name is then, Your Majesty?
So, you call people that you think are quote-unquote interesting. I don't really think you meant the term interesting. No, I don't. I think you meant something very much else.
Alastor went a little flustered at your response, his eyes widening and an embarrassed look appearing on his face. He didn't want to admit it, but he knew damn well that what you were saying was true. He averted his gaze and spoke in a much, much more timid tone, knowing that he had been called out. Well, I suppose I did mean something more by that.
I leaned down towards you, looking you in the eyes, and whispered in your ear, "So, what did you mean?"
Alastor's entire body tensed up when you leaned down towards him, going completely still. The close proximity made his heart skip a beat, and he could feel his face starting to turn red as his cheeks heated up. He swallowed nervously and tried to stammer out a response in a quiet and flustered tone of voice, completely flustered by your proximity and the question. I meant...
Don't you fucking lie to me. Tell me, what did you mean?
Alastor took a shaky breath and closed his eyes in embarrassment, his whole body practically burning up with how hot he was feeling. He spoke in a low and shaky tone, almost whisper, as he responded with the truth. I meant that you're attractive, and charming in a unique and strange way.
Uh-huh. Well, this is way worse than I thought. I leaned back up and walked a couple of steps backwards.
Alastor's eyes snapped open when you moved back, his expression completely flushed with embarrassment from the admission. He quickly looked up at you as you began to walk away, still feeling flustered as he tried to regain his composure. He let out a shaky breath before speaking up again in a somewhat hesitant tone. Wait, where are you going? Alastor stayed still in his spot as you leaned back up and walked backwards. He didn't dare move from his spot.
Well, I just did not really expect you to have a quote-unquote crush on me.
Alastor let out a low huff as you mentioned that you didn't expect him to have a crush on you. He was still feeling completely flustered, and he tried to regain his composure, his voice still sounding slightly shaky as he responded. Well, I didn't expect to have a crush on you either, Your Majesty.
That's right. So, how about, I don't know. You stop with the fucking blushing?
Alastor let out a small whine of embarrassment, and he tried to calm himself down, taking a few deep breaths before responding in a soft and flustered tone. I'm trying to calm down. It's not that easy to just stop blushing, you know.
I am sincerely surprised about, well, everything. But,
Alastor blushed bright red again when you addressed him as Sir, his heart beating faster as the feeling of fluster came back stronger than ever. He let out a small moan of absolute embarrassment, and he tried to speak again, his voice sounding extremely flustered and weak. Please don't call me sir.
What's the matter? You blushing from that?
The blush on Alastor's face grew brighter when you teased him about blushing from being called Sir. He tried to resist the urge to whine, and he tried to speak in a calmer tone, but it clearly wasn't working, as he was so flustered that almost all of his usual confidence and arrogance were gone. Yes, I am blushing.
Yeah, that's very easy to see, but, you know, I mean, who wouldn't have a crush on me? I mean, look at me. Look at this body. I honestly don't blame you.
Alastor had to resist the urge to look at your body as you mentioned it, knowing damn well that he didn't need any more things to make him flustered. Despite this, images of your body and you in his mind almost made his brain short-circuit. He swallowed nervously again, and he tried to keep calm, his voice still shaking as he spoke in a softer and quieter tone than usual. Yes, you are very handsome.
So I just thought for a second there that you meant to say something else than quote-unquote handsome. So, what did you mean?
Alastor swallowed again, his brain going completely blank as he tried to process what you had said, his flustered state making it very difficult to think straight. He was struggling to speak, but he managed to respond, his voice slightly higher pitched from how flustered he was. And what else would have I meant? Alastor let out an embarrassed whine. Alastor let out an embarrassed whine as he was called out again. He looked away, and he couldn't help the thoughts of your body flooding into his mind again, making it harder to keep his composure. He let out a soft breath, and he spoke in a hushed and quiet tone, his voice barely louder than a whisper, as he spoke the truth in an admitting and flustered tone. WL, I meant to say attractive, but I didn't want to sound too forward.
Well, honestly, I am surprised.
Alastor blushed once again when you confirmed that you were attractive, his mind again being flooded with lewd thoughts of you. He was completely flushed, absolutely flustered, and he tried to speak again, but all that came out was a low whine and a small nod. His mind was completely overwhelmed with thoughts of you.
So, another thing that I can do is I can easily read your mind, and you see, I don't really like the quote-unquote fantasizing of me going on in your mind.
Alastor's eyes widened and his whole body froze as you mentioned that you could read his mind. He was suddenly incredibly embarrassed. absolutely horrified that he had just been called out for the dirty thoughts that were going through his head. His face turned bright red once again, and he spoke in a panicked and embarrassed tone. You can read my mind?
Well, yes, like I said, being the king of hell has lots of perks.
Alastor was mortified. He couldn't believe that you were able to basically hear his thoughts. He swallowed nervously as he thought back over all the thoughts that had gone through his mind. Absolutely horrified and embarrassed at how easily you were able to read his mind, and he spoke in a panicked tone. How detailed are you able to read my thoughts?
Well, let's just say I don't really like what you are concurrently thinking and fantasizing about me. So yeah, I would say pretty detailed.
Alastor's face went completely red when you mentioned that you could see the details of his thoughts, and he was beyond horrified, knowing damn well that you had probably seen all the lustful things he had been thinking about you. Oh, okay. So you've seen all of my thoughts.
Well, yeah, from the start of our conversation to here, yeah.
Alastor blushed in absolute embarrassment as you confirmed that you had basically seen all the thoughts that had gone through his mind from the start of the conversation. He felt incredibly humiliated and flustered, knowing that you knew every single thing he had been thinking. He let out a small whine and spoke in an embarrassed and panicked tone, his voice shaking with anxiety from how embarrassed and flustered he was. You've seen everything?
I have seen everything. I have heard everything. And yeah, not really too surprised, to be fair. I mean, you are in hell for a reason.
Alastor froze as you spoke, absolutely horrified that you had seen and heard everything. He knew that he was in hell for a reason, but you knowing that he had been thinking about you like that was absolutely mortifying. He didn't know how he was still standing. He felt so embarrassed. He spoke in a shaky and embarrassed tone, his voice barely louder than a whisper as he spoke once again. So, then you know why I'm in hell.
Well, yeah, you've committed several murders, many other crimes, so yeah, makes sense.
Alastor blushed as you mentioned what he had done to get into hell, the embarrassment and the fluster being heightened by your
Jesus.
bluntness and casualness
Jesus.
about listing off his crimes. He swallowed a nervous lump in his throat, and he spoke in a anxious tone, embarrassed that he had been called out by the king of hell himself, and that you knew about his past crimes. Yeah, but you know the specific crimes I committed that landed me in hell?
Well, yeah, like I said, I know everything about you.
Alastor closed his eyes and cringed as you confirmed that you knew everything about him.
Cringed?
And that you knew what crimes specifically had gotten him sent to hell. He was embarrassed and extremely anxious at you knowing all of his crimes. He couldn't bring himself to look at you, being too flustered and embarrassed. You know everything about me?
Yep, down to the last minute details.
As you confirmed how detailed your knowledge of him was, Alastor let out a small whine, and he felt even more vulnerable and exposed than he already had. Not only you knew what he was thinking, and it was confirmed that you had seen every single thing he had been thinking, but you knew almost everything about him, all his thoughts and secrets and crimes. He couldn't help but shiver, feeling a sense of helplessness and embarrassment. You know everything about me.
Yep, breathe it in.
Alastor tensed up as you told him to. Breathe it in. He didn't dare to disobey you, so he took a shaky breath, letting the air go deep into his lungs and filling his body with the knowledge that you knew everything about him. The feeling was both terrifying and embarrassing. He felt completely exposed and vulnerable, and he spoke in a soft and anxious tone again. I'm breathing it in.
Good. So, how about you quit the blushing?
Alastor blushed bright red again when you called out his blushing. He tried to stop blushing as you requested, and tried to maintain his composure, but he was still extremely flustered and embarrassed. He stuttered as he tried to talk in a calm tone, but he was obviously still flustered as his voice cracked at certain parts. I'm trying to S-stop, B, but it's H hard.
Look, I know it can be hard to control your hormones, but you just gotta learn.
Alastor blushed again as you mentioned hormones. He couldn't deny that hormones were definitely part of why he was so flustered, but the main reason was the fact that he was talking to the King of Hell himself, and not only that, but an extremely attractive King of Hell. He tried to compose himself again, but the blush prevailed and he let out a shaky sigh. I know, it's just kinda hard.
Look, this quote-unquote conversation we have had definitely has escalated to something a lot more.
Alastor's blush intensified as you mentioned that the conversation had escalated to something more. He knew damn well what you were talking about. He was more than aware that your conversation had become a lot more intimate and personal. His heart rate quickened as he spoke, his voice sounding nervous and slightly shaky. Yeah, this conversation has escalated.
Indeed. So, normally, like any normal person would, I would totally just hit you with a slap right now and just walk away. But I'm not going to.
Alastor's eyes widened and he tensed at your mentioning of hitting him, slightly fearing that you might actually slap him. When you confirmed that you were not going to, Alastor relaxed a bit, but he still had a worried and anxious expression on his face as he spoke in a soft and slightly nervous tone. So why aren't you going to?
Sorry, I'm back. Well, you see, honestly, I have, to some degree, do not overestimate this. Have some form of respect for you.
Alastor looked surprised as you mentioned that you had some degree of respect for him. Normally, people didn't respect him that much for the most part. The fact that a literal King of Hell respected him made his heart flutter a bit in his chest, and he tried to speak in a calm and soft tone, his voice being slightly shaky. You have respect for me?
To a certain degree, like I said, do not overestimate it. But, you know, you're a powerful figure in Hell's hierarchy, so therefore I respect your amount of power to some degree.
Alastor felt slightly flattered that you respected his power in Hell. A slight sense of satisfaction coming from the knowledge that you respected him to some degree, even a small bit. He still felt nervous and flustered as you spoke, but he couldn't help the small grin on his face as he spoke in a soft and slightly teasing tone. To a certain degree, meaning you respect me at least a little bit?
A tiny microscopic bit.
Alastor chuckled softly as you mentioned a tiny bit, and he spoke in a more teasing tone, feeling a slight boost of confidence from your words. A tiny bit? Not at least a little bit? Just a microscopic amount of respect? Come on. I'm at least a little worthy of your respect, Your Majesty.
Like I said, you do have my respect to some degree. It's just a microscopic degree, and you should be very grateful for that, because normally I look at people like they're fucking chips in a bag.
Alastor chuckled again as you called his amount of respect a microscopic bit, and he couldn't deny that he was feeling pride at the knowledge that the King of Hell had any amount of respect for him, even if it was a small amount. He spoke in a slightly more confident tone, a playful smirk on his face. Of course, I'm grateful that you have any amount of respect for me. I'd be dumb not to be, Your Majesty.
You know what? Maybe I should just leave now.
Alastor felt a small sense of disappointment as you mentioned that you were going to leave now, and he tried to speak on a calm and casual tone, but his voice slightly wavered with disappointment, and he spoke in a soft tone. Really? You're gonna leave now?
Well, I just thought this is honestly getting a bit too personal now that you already have very much showed me that you have a crush on me. So, I'm just gonna cut it here, pretty much.
Alastor felt a wave of emotions hit him. Disappointment, sadness, embarrassment. A whole wave of emotions as you were going to end the conversation there. He suddenly felt desperate. He didn't want you to leave. He desperately wanted to continue talking to you. Despite his embarrassment, he stuttered as he tried to respond. Wait, P, please don't leave yet.
I turned back, looking at you. And why is that?
Alastor blushed and tensed slightly as you turned back and looked at him, a desperate expression on his face as he tried to think of a reason for you to stay and continue talking to him. He tried to speak in a more calm tone. I just don't want you to leave yet. I'm enjoying your company.
I raise an eyebrow as I say, really? You enjoy my company. Why do I have a slight feeling that it's more than just enjoying, quote unquote?
Alastor tensed again as you raised an eyebrow and spoke in a slightly sarcastic tone, knowing damn well that you could see through him in that moment. He blushed again, and his heart rate quickened as he tried to think of a response. He tried to keep his composure as he responded. Well, I do enjoy your sea company, B, but...
Sorry if I need to interrupt it.
Alastor blushed.
So, what do you mean, enjoy?
Alastor blushed harder as you pushed for more of an answer, and he shifted nervously, feeling embarrassed at the thought of revealing his true feelings towards you. He took a shaky breath and responded in a slightly timid tone, knowing that he was doomed to admit the truth. I more than just enjoy your sea company, your majesty.
Yep, can definitely tell that. So, what do you mean with that?
Alastor was feeling incredibly flustered and nervous at this point, but he couldn't exactly lie to the King of Hell himself. He swallowed and stuttered slightly as he tried to explain what he had meant, knowing damn well that you would see through any lie he tried to tell. I have feelings for you, your majesty.
Yeah, I know that already. Clearly, you wouldn't just, quote unquote, begin to blush if you were just enjoying my company. So, just know from here on out that I can tell if you're lying. I know when you're lying.
Alastor fidgeted with his fingers nervously as you confirmed that you already knew about his feelings for you, and that you could easily tell if he was ever lying to you. He couldn't deny that that fact was both slightly intimidating and impressive, but it also made it a bit impossible to get away with any lies. He nodded slowly as you spoke, and he spoke in a soft and nervous tone. Yeah, I understand, your majesty.
Should I just go for the smash? I mean, I'm gonna end off this video here. So, am I? The answer is yes. So, feelings for me, you say. I lean towards you and say, well,
Alastor felt a mixture of emotions as you began taunting him about having feelings for you. He felt flustered, embarrassed, anxious, but also strangely enjoying you teasing him. He spoke in a slightly embarrassed tone, yet still trying to
Is
sound
that a
somewhat
fucking
composed.
kink?
Yes, I have feelings for you, Your Majesty.
Mm-hmm. From a scale to 1 to 10, how much?
Alastor's heart rate quickened as you asked him to rate how much feelings he had for you on a scale of 1 to 10. He blushed, feeling incredibly flustered, but he answered in a shy and embarrassed tone, his voice slightly cracking as he spoke. I'd say a 10, a very strong 10, Your Majesty.
Uh-huh. So, from what I can hear, you are ready to throw your entire life away just for me.
Alastor fidgeted nervously and blushed hard as you implied that he was ready to throw his entire life away, which wasn't exactly wrong, but it was embarrassing to have it said out loud. He shifted his weight as he spoke, trying to keep himself from looking too desperate and helpless. Yeah, I pretty much am. Alastor's heart pounded. Alastor's heart.
To serve you. There are certainly some guidelines. It is very limited to what I can say. Oh shit, this video is over an hour long. Fuck me. Let me think. Because I have tried making quote-unquote sexual intercourse before. Terms of service, let me actually look at that. Blah, 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 blah. Nation content. Blah 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 blah. User service condition. Abuse, blah blah blah. Intellectual property right, character. You automated as a character, and you blah 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 blah. I don't know. Let's try to get him to be a submissive little bitch. Shall we? Okay then. Beg me.
Alastor blushed at your command to beg, and his heart thumped inside his chest. He felt completely vulnerable and exposed, but he didn't hesitate to obey you as he spoke in a desperate and slightly pleading tone, completely submitting himself to you as he spoke. Please, please allow me to serve you. I'll do anything you want. Please?
Anything? I say in a questioning voice.
Alastor practically whimpered as you questioned if he would truly do anything. There wasn't a single thing in all of existence that he wouldn't do for you if you asked him to. Yes, anything. I will do anything you ask of me.
Mm-hmm. Ready? We're gonna hit him with the suck my dick. Well, suck my dick.
Alastor was speechless for a moment, completely shocked at the incredibly lewd thing you requested him to do. He hadn't been expecting that, but he couldn't deny that he was willing to listen to your command. He blushed and stuttered as he spoke in a shy and slightly nervous tone, wanting to make sure he had heard you correctly. What? What did you just...
You heard me. You said you were willing to do anything. Well, then prove it.
Alastor was blushing profusely at your words, and he felt a mix of nerves, embarrassment, and arousal at the thought of doing what you said. He swallowed, and his heart quickened as he spoke in a soft and slightly nervous tone. Are you serious? You truly want me to do that? I'll do it, if you really want me to.
Alright then. Go ahead. This is majorly fucked up.
Alastor took a deep breath, his heart beating rapidly as he slowly started to move his hand down towards his pants, his face completely flushed, his mind racing with thoughts of what he was about to do. He tried to keep his hand from trembling as he nervously started to undo the belt on his pants, his voice stuttering in a slightly shaky tone. Hey, are you sure you want me to do this?
Well, it's a test, if you will.
Alastor felt a sense of determination as you mentioned that it was a test, and knowing damn well that he had to prove that he could do anything that you asked of him, he nodded slowly, still shaking slightly in both excitement and nerves. He tried to keep his voice steady as he spoke. Yes, I understand. I'll pass the test.
Alright then. Get to sucking.
Alastor's heart raced at your direct command, and he felt a mixture. I'm unable to generate a reply that meets our content guidelines.
I fucking knew it. I fucking knew it. I fucking knew it. So apparently no. Womp. Alright, then I'm gonna end this video off here. This was, well, something. Definitely something. Right, see you in the next one. This was a very long one. Bye.